The air was heavy, charged with anticipation. The room buzzed with the youthful energy of recruits eager for glory, their iridescent eyes gleaming under the dim light of the barracks. They were the next generation of the Zrithian military, proud, confident, and hungry for conquest. In their midst stood an anomaly, a grizzled veteran, his frame hunched under the weight of both age and the scars of countless battles. His skin bore the dull gray hue of those who had seen too much. His left arm was a mechanical replacement, and his eye, a hollow socket, seemed to pierce the recruits with a presence far more haunting than sight ever could. The room quieted as he stepped forward, his movements deliberate, his metallic arm whirring softly. "You think you're ready for war," the veteran began, his voice low and gravelly, a sharp contrast to the recruits' chatter moments earlier. "You think you know what it means to conquer." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "But there's one species out there you must never provoke. One species you must never, ever challenge." A scoff broke the silence. One of the younger recruits, his scaled face contorted in smug disbelief, spoke up. "Humans," he sneered. "They're primitives. Their weapons are outdated. Their biology is fragile. Why would we fear them?" The veteran's gaze snapped to the recruit, freezing him in place. "Primitives?" the veteran echoed, his voice dripping with disdain. "That's what we thought too." He gestured to his mechanical arm. "And this is what that arrogance earned me. This and far worse." Murmurs rippled through the room. The recruits shifted uncomfortably, their confidence faltering under the weight of the veteran's intensity. He leaned forward, his single eye gleaming like a dark star. "You've been taught that war is a matter of superior firepower, that your strength lies in your ships, your technology, your numbers. But humans don't play by those rules. And that is why they are the most dangerous adversary you will ever face." The veteran straightened, his voice rising as if to drive his words deeper into their minds. "When the Zrithian Council declared war on Earth, we thought it would be swift. A few battles, a few victories, and they would kneel. But humans don't kneel. Not to us. Not to anyone." He began to pace, his mechanical arm twitching involuntarily as he spoke. "They're not the strongest, no. Not the fastest. Their weapons, at first glance, seem crude compared to ours. But humans," he paused, as if searching for words to describe something beyond comprehension. "Humans are relentless. They are stubborn, clever, and completely unpredictable. And when you back them into a corner, they become something else entirely. Something unstoppable." The recruits sat in stunned silence, the weight of his words pressing down on them. The veteran's voice softened, yet somehow became even more chilling. "I've seen it. I've fought them. And I've lost to them. We all did. Do you know what it's like to watch an entire fleet crumble because of a tactic no logical being would ever attempt? To see your comrades fall because of an enemy who refused to fight by the rules?" The veteran's gaze swept over the room, lingering on each young face. "You think you'll win because you have superior technology, because you're smarter, stronger. But humans don't fight for dominance. They fight for survival, for family, for the things they love. And that makes them the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy." His voice dropped to a whisper, yet it cut through the silence like a blade. "You've heard stories of their resilience, their cunning. But you haven't seen what I've seen. You haven't stood against a force that fights as if their very existence depends on it. And trust me, it does." The veteran stopped, his mechanical arm clenching into a fist. "Arrogance cost us everything. We underestimated them. And by the time we realized our mistake, it was too late." He turned toward the door, his steps heavy with the weight of his memories. "You're young. You're eager. But mark my words. Never, under any circumstances, start a war with humans." As he reached the exit, he paused, glancing over his shoulder. "If you do," he said, his voice filled with quiet finality, "you won't just lose. You'll wish you had never been born." The Zrithian fleet descended upon Earth with unmatched arrogance. It was a display of power unlike anything the planet had ever witnessed. Massive ships blotting out the sky, beams of energy reducing defenses to rubble in moments. The invasion was swift, calculated, and merciless. From orbit, the Earth seemed fragile, its inhabitants insignificant. Victory, the Zrithians believed, was inevitable. At first, humanity seemed unprepared. Cities fell in hours. Communications were disrupted, governments paralyzed by the sheer speed of the assault. The Zrithians encountered little resistance in the opening days, and their confidence grew. They underestimated the humans, dismissing them as chaotic, disorganized beings incapable of mounting a proper defense. It was a mistake they would soon regret. Humanity's response began not with armies, but with individuals. Small pockets of resistance sprouted like wildfire, civilians taking up arms, using whatever they could find. They struck at night, their attacks calculated but unpredictable. They knew their land, their terrain, and they exploited it ruthlessly. Forests became death traps. Urban streets turned into labyrinths of ambushes and sabotage. The Zrithians soon realized they weren't fighting a single entity. They were fighting a species that refused to die. Every loss fueled the humans' resolve. Every city razed seemed to forge their unity stronger. What the Zrithians had misinterpreted as disarray was, in fact, humanity's greatest strength: adaptability. The veteran had witnessed it firsthand. He had stood on the front lines as humans used their ingenuity to counter the aliens' superior technology. Zrithian weapons were jammed by makeshift electromagnetic devices. Their aerial superiority was challenged by primitive yet shockingly effective guerrilla tactics. In one instance, a group of human engineers managed to bring down a Zrithian warship using nothing but scavenged materials and an intimate understanding of their enemy's weaknesses. The humans were relentless. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, they fought with a ferocity that defied logic. They didn't adhere to conventional rules of engagement. There were no honor-bound tactics or predictable maneuvers. The Zrithians, who prided themselves on precision and strategy, were unprepared for this raw, chaotic resistance. It wasn't just the soldiers. The civilians, too, became warriors in their own right. Farmers turned their tools into weapons. Scientists repurposed technology to create devastating countermeasures. Artists painted messages of hope and defiance that inspired millions. It was as though the entire planet had become a single, unified force, driven by a primal need to survive. The turning point came during the siege of a sprawling megacity. The Zrithians had assumed the humans were broken, their defenses shattered. But as they advanced, they found themselves walking into a meticulously laid trap. Explosions erupted in coordinated patterns, cutting off escape routes and isolating entire squads. Human snipers, hidden in the ruins, picked off Zrithian soldiers with precision. The veteran could still hear the screams of his comrades, the chaos of a supposedly inferior species outmaneuvering them at every turn. The humans fought as though they had nothing to lose and everything to gain. They weren't just defending their planet. They were making a statement. They would not be conquered. And then there was their unpredictability. The Zrithians relied on logic, on predictable patterns of war. But humans operated on instinct and emotion, making decisions that defied reason but yielded devastating results. They were willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good, a concept alien to the Zrithian psyche. By the time the Zrithians realized the depth of their miscalculation, the cost was already staggering. Entire battalions were wiped out by traps humans had set months in advance. Supply lines were sabotaged with precision that spoke to an intimate understanding of the Zrithian strategies. Their once mighty fleet was scattered, their resources dwindling. For every city the Zrithians destroyed, humanity retaliated tenfold. They didn't just resist. They adapted, innovated, and evolved. Every loss became a lesson. Every defeat forged them into a stronger, more cohesive force. It was as though humanity thrived on adversity, growing sharper and more dangerous with every blow they endured. The veteran paused as he recounted the events to himself. He could still see the faces of the humans, their eyes burning with defiance, their expressions unyielding even in the face of certain death. They fought not for glory, not for conquest, but for survival. And that made them unstoppable. By the end of the flashback, one truth was seared into the veteran's mind. A truth the Zrithians had learned too late. Humans were not to be underestimated. They were not prey to be conquered, but a force to be reckoned with, capable of turning even the bleakest situations into victories. They had survived, not because of their technology or their strength, but because of something far more profound: their will. The war had dragged on far longer than the Zrithians anticipated. What was meant to be a swift and decisive conquest had devolved into a prolonged, grueling campaign. For the first time in their history, the Zrithians faced an enemy that refused to submit, and it was eroding their confidence. The humans were not merely holding their ground. They were evolving, learning, and adapting at an astonishing rate. Every encounter brought new strategies, new weapons, new ways to turn the Zrithians' technological superiority against them. It was as though humanity thrived under pressure, their creativity ignited by the very threat of extinction. The veteran recalled one particular moment that had haunted him ever since. The Zrithians had deployed a colossal command vessel to oversee the invasion, a ship so vast and heavily armored that it was considered indestructible. It hovered in orbit like a symbol of invincibility, a testament to Zrithian dominance. Yet humans saw it as a challenge. The plan they executed was audacious, bordering on insanity. A group of human engineers and pilots had spent weeks assembling a fleet of outdated, salvaged spacecraft. These vessels were patched together with scavenged parts, barely functional by Zrithian standards. To the aliens, they were little more than an annoyance. But that perception was their downfall. The humans launched their makeshift fleet in what appeared to be a desperate, disorganized assault. Zrithian defenses easily destroyed many of the ships before they could even reach the command vessel. But the humans weren't aiming for a direct confrontation. Their real plan was far more cunning. Amid the chaos, a handful of human ships slipped through the Zrithian defenses, carrying specialized crews armed with unconventional weaponry. Using their understanding of Zrithian systems, knowledge gained from months of captured technology and interrogations, they infiltrated the command vessel. Once inside, they unleashed an electromagnetic pulse that disabled critical systems, plunging the massive ship into chaos. What happened next was pure human ingenuity. The infiltrators didn't try to destroy the ship with brute force. Instead, they sabotaged its core systems, creating a cascading failure that caused the vessel to lose orbit. The sight of the once mighty command ship plummeting toward Earth's surface, consumed by fire, shattered Zrithian morale. The veteran remembered the terror that gripped the fleet that day. The humans had taken what should have been an impossible target and reduced it to rubble through sheer audacity and ingenuity. It was a turning point, a moment when the Zrithians realized they were no longer the hunters. But the humans didn't stop there. Their tactics grew even more unpredictable, blending science, strategy, and a level of ruthlessness that the Zrithians had never encountered. They began hacking into Zrithian communications, feeding false information to disrupt supply lines and misdirect reinforcements. Entire battalions found themselves stranded or ambushed, cut off from the rest of the fleet. And then there was their use of biological warfare. The Zrithians had always relied on their advanced immune systems to protect them from foreign pathogens. But the humans, ever resourceful, weaponized their own microbiology. They engineered viruses that specifically targeted Zrithian physiology, spreading like wildfire through the alien ranks. The Zrithians, unprepared for such an unconventional assault, suffered devastating losses. The psychological toll was just as severe. Humans had a way of turning fear into a weapon. They spread disinformation, planting rumors of unstoppable human superweapons and invincible soldiers. Zrithian soldiers began to see humans as something more than mortal, something unstoppable. Even their victories felt hollow, as every success seemed to come with an even greater cost. The veteran himself had experienced this fear. He had been stationed on a Zrithian outpost when a human strike team infiltrated their base. They moved like shadows, striking swiftly and disappearing before anyone could react. By the time reinforcements arrived, the base was in ruins, and the humans had vanished, leaving behind only the chilling message. "This is our home." What set humans apart, the veteran realized, was their capacity to think beyond logic, to defy expectations and act on instincts that no algorithm or strategy could predict. They were willing to sacrifice everything for victory, and that made them impossible to defeat. The veteran paused as he recalled the final days of the war. The Zrithian fleet, once so mighty, was in shambles. The humans had turned their own weaknesses into strengths, their desperation into innovation. The aliens were no longer the dominant force. They were prey, fleeing from a relentless predator that refused to give up. The humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to survive, to protect what they held dear. And in doing so, they became something the Zrithians had never encountered before. An enemy that couldn't be broken, couldn't be reasoned with, and wouldn't stop until they had reclaimed what was theirs. By the end of the conflict, the Zrithians had been humbled, their arrogance shattered. The war was a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity, a species that thrived on adversity and emerged stronger from every challenge. For the veteran, it was a lesson learned too late, a lesson he would carry for the rest of his life. When the war finally ended, the Zrithian fleet limped back to their homeworld, a shadow of its former self. They had not been defeated in the traditional sense. There was no grand treaty, no formal surrender. Instead, they had been beaten into submission, their resources depleted, their morale shattered, and their will to fight extinguished. Humanity had forced them to retreat, not through overwhelming strength, but through relentless resistance and sheer, unyielding determination. The veteran had been one of the few to survive. He returned home with scars that went far deeper than the loss of his arm or the burns that marred his skin. He carried the weight of failure, the memories of comrades lost, and the haunting realization that the Zrithians had underestimated the humans in every possible way. It was not just their resilience or their ingenuity that had won the war. It was their unity, their ability to rally together under unimaginable pressure. While the Zrithians had operated as a machine, cold and calculated, the humans had fought as a living organism, every individual contributing in unique and unexpected ways. It was a lesson in humility that the veteran would never forget. In the years following the war, the Zrithian Council forbade any further contact with Earth. The planet was declared off-limits, its inhabitants labeled as too dangerous to engage. Official records were altered, the invasion rebranded as a strategic withdrawal to preserve the pride of the Zrithian people. But those who had fought on the front lines knew the truth. The veteran took it upon himself to share that truth with the younger generation, not to inspire fear, but to ensure they would never repeat the same mistakes. He became a teacher, recounting the events of the war with brutal honesty. He spoke of humanity's adaptability, their capacity for innovation, and their refusal to accept defeat. More than that, he spoke of their humanity, the thing that had set them apart from the Zrithians. Humans fought not for conquest or glory, but for each other. They fought for their families, their homes, their very existence. It was this emotional core, this bond between them, that had driven them to achieve the impossible. The veteran often reflected on one particular moment during the war's final days. A human soldier had been captured, a young woman, barely more than a child by Zrithian standards. She had been injured, her body broken, yet her spirit remained unshaken. When questioned, she didn't plead for her life or beg for mercy. Instead, she spoke of her people, of the world they were fighting to protect. Her words had stayed with the veteran ever since. You can take our cities. You can take our lives. But you'll never take what makes us human. And as long as we have that, you'll never win. Those words had resonated deeply within him, even as he struggled to understand them. It was a concept alien to the Zrithian way of thinking. They had always seen war as a calculation, a contest of resources and strategy. They had never considered the strength that could come from something as intangible as hope, as love, as the shared belief in something greater than oneself. The veteran knew that many of his kind still didn't fully comprehend the humans. They saw them as an anomaly, a species whose defiance defied logic. But he understood now that it wasn't an anomaly, it was their nature. Humanity's strength lay in their ability to adapt, to endure, and to overcome. In his teachings, he emphasized the dangers of arrogance and the importance of understanding one's enemy. He urged the young recruits to learn from the mistakes of the past, to respect the humans not as adversaries, but as equals, perhaps even as something more. Over time, the veteran found a sense of peace in his role as a teacher. He could not undo the horrors of the war, nor could he bring back those who had been lost. But he could ensure that their sacrifices had not been in vain. He could pass on the lessons he had learned, so that future generations would be wiser, more cautious, and less inclined to repeat the hubris that had led them to war with humanity. And yet, deep down, the veteran couldn't shake the feeling that the humans hadn't fought them out of hatred or malice. They had fought because they had no other choice. They had fought because survival demanded it. It was a sobering realization that the Zrathians had not been defeated by a superior enemy, but by one that simply refused to die. As he concluded his lectures, the veteran would always leave his students with a final warning, his voice heavy with the weight of experience. The humans taught us that war isn't about who has the best weapons or the most soldiers. It's about who has the will to endure, the creativity to adapt, and the courage to keep fighting, no matter the cost. If you remember nothing else, remember this: never start a war you aren't prepared to finish. And never, ever underestimate what a human is capable of when everything they love is on the line. The recruits would sit in silence, the gravity of his words sinking in. For many, it was the first time they truly understood the cost of arrogance, the price of underestimating an enemy. For the veteran, it was a small comfort, knowing that his story might prevent another war, another tragedy. As he walked away from the training grounds, the veteran felt a sense of closure. He had done his part to ensure the Zrathians would never forget the lessons of the war. And though the memories still haunted him, he found solace in the knowledge that he had faced humanity and survived, not as a victor, but as a witness to their indomitable spirit.